10 houses, all of them in Florida, all of them under $80,000, and every single one of them has a story that the listing does not tell you. Florida is supposed to be expensive, and it is in most places. Miami, Tampa, Orlando. If you are shopping in those markets right now, $80,000 gets you a parking spot? Maybe. But Florida is a big state. There are markets in the state where $80,000 still buys you a real house on real land, and there are reasons those markets get ignored by most buyers. Some of those reasons are bad. Some of them are actually fine once you understand what you are looking at. That is what this video is about. Not a highlight reel of cheap listings. An honest breakdown of what each one of these actually is, what it costs to fix, what the market around it looks like, and whether the deal makes any real sense. Every house on this list, I am going to give you the street, the basics, the taxes, and the local median income. Because those last two numbers are the ones most people never look at. And they are the ones that tell you whether a cheap house in a cheap town is an opportunity or a trap. One more thing before we get into it. Stay through the whole list, because the property I saved for the end is not the cheapest one on this list. But it is the one I keep coming back to when I ask myself which one of these actually makes sense for a regular buyer. I will explain why at the end. Let's go. House number 10, Jacksonville, Florida, $55,000. Note, at the time this video was created, this property was listed and available. We are starting in Jacksonville, 822 square feet, built in 1916. That is over 100 years old. And the seller wants $55,000 cash, no inspection, no appraisal, and a 5% binder that is non-refundable. Read that again. They want money up front that you do not get back if you decide to walk away. That is not normal. That is a listing that is screaming at you, only in the most polite legal terms possible, that the seller knows there is something in that house that would make you run if you saw it. Could be foundation work, could be structural damage, could be mold behind every wall. We do not know because the seller is making very sure you cannot find out before you are already committed. The zip code here, 32208, runs violent crime numbers that are nearly 3 times the national average according to public data. The taxes are $363 a year, almost nothing, but cheap taxes cannot fix a bad foundation in a rough zip code with a no inspection clause. Jacksonville has real economic activity, real employment, and real opportunity. This specific house on this specific block with these specific seller terms is the wrong version of that story. This one is last on the list for a reason. House number 9, Jacksonville, Florida, $59,950. 1,660 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, $60,000. And right now, as this listing sits, there is no power and there's no water connected to this property. That is not a small detail. No utilities means no standard inspection. No standard inspection means you are buying this entirely on faith or on a flashlight and whatever your contractor can see in the dark. Cash or hard money only. The zip code 32209 has one of the worst crime profiles in this entire batch, and yet the rent zestimate on this one is $1,697 a month. That is a number that makes investors stop and look. $1,600 a month on a $60,000 purchase is a return you cannot find in almost any other Florida market right now. But here is the honest truth. That rent estimate is based on what a renovated, functioning version of this house could theoretically command. The house in front of you today has no utilities and an unknown interior condition. The gap between what this could be and what this is right now is everything, and that gap costs money. Budget $30,000 to $45,000 for a full systems overhaul on a house this old with no active utilities. If you know this zip code, if you have a contractor you trust, and if you have the appetite for a true deep value play, the math is interesting. If you are learning how this works, this is not the one to learn on. House number 8, Jacksonville, Florida, $45,000. Note, at the time this video was created, this property was listed and available. $23 per square foot. Let that land for a second. You can barely buy decent lumber for $23 per square foot, and this house is asking that for the whole thing, nearly 2,000 square feet of it. The Zestimate on this property sits at $75,600, which means even Zillow's algorithm thinks someone is leaving money on the table here. The rent Zestimate is $1,883 a month. If those numbers are anywhere close to real once the property is renovated, and that is a big if, you are looking at a cash-on-cash scenario that is genuinely difficult to replicate in this state at any price. Here is the reality check. Two-story fixer, sold as is, no warranties, zip code 32206 runs crime numbers roughly 3 times the national average. At $45,000, you're buying in with full awareness that this house is in a tough part of Jacksonville and it needs real work, probably $25,000 to $40,000 worth, depending on what is behind the walls of a 1926 two-story. The upside is real, so is the risk. This is not house hunting. This is a calculated investor move in a market you need to understand before you write the check. 3 Jacksonville houses, 3 different versions of the same risk profile. Now we are leaving Jacksonville entirely because the rest of this list is a different story, different cities, different markets, and in a few cases, a completely different math. House number 7, Tallahassee, Florida, $70,000. This one looks different on the surface. 2007 construction, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,300 square feet, no knob and tube wiring, no cast iron pipes, no 100-year-old foundation questions. This is a modern house that should, in theory, need far less work than anything else we have looked at so far. And here is the catch. This is a foreclosure auction, not a standard retail listing. The $70,000 figure is an auction starting point. What you actually pay depends on who else shows up with a paddle. You cannot tour it the normal way. You cannot do a standard inspection before you bid. Sold as is at auction is a very different experience than sold as is through a listing agent. Tallahassee is the state capital, Florida State University, Florida A&M state government employment, real economic anchors that drive real rental demand. If you buy this property at or near the $70,000 mark and the house is in the condition it appears to be, the rent Zestimate of $1,659 a month is not a fantasy. But auction pricing is unpredictable, and you need to factor that uncertainty into every number you run. Verify the auction status, do your homework on the zip code, and make sure you know your ceiling before you bid. House number 6, Perry, Florida, $75,000. Perry is about 57 minutes from Tallahassee and 30 minutes from Keaton Beach. In a state where coast access drives real estate value, that is a location detail worth understanding. This is not beachfront. But for a buyer who wants proximity to the Gulf without paying Gulf prices, Taylor County offers a version of that equation. The house itself is a 1950 build, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, 1,100 square feet, cash only, sold as is. And here is a detail buried in the listing notes. There is an encroachment by an adjoining landowner. That is a title and boundary issue that needs a real estate attorney to sort out before you get anywhere near closing. Encroachments can range from a minor fence placement to a contested property line that affects the value and usability of the lot. Do not skip that conversation. Taylor County median income is around $40,000. Lower end for this list, which sets a ceiling on what rent this market will support. You are probably looking at $800 to $1,000 a month for a renovated 3-bedroom here. The property taxes are $969 a year, which is $81 a month. Manageable, but not nothing. At $75,000 cash with a known title issue, you want a clear picture of what you own before you commit. 5, Bonifay, Florida, $79,900. This one does not fit neatly into a category, and that is exactly why it is on this list. 1 bedroom, 720 square feet, but nearly 3 acres of land. And the listing notes tell you what this really is: a converted barn situation with an outdoor bathhouse, tractor-trailer storage, partial fencing, a covered porch, and plumbing that is not yet completed. This is less of a house purchase and more of a land and structure play with a specific lifestyle vision attached to it. Bonifay is in Holmes County, Northwest Florida Panhandle, about an hour to Panama City Beach from here. The crime profile is actually one of the quieter ones on this list. Neighborhood Scout puts the violent crime odds here at roughly 1 in 700, which is well below national averages, so the location itself is not a problem. The question is whether your investment thesis requires a finished house, or whether you are buying acreage with the option to build your own thing for someone with a homestead mindset or a rural retreat vision. The 3 acres near the Panhandle at $80,000 is the headline. For a standard buy and hold rental investor, 1 bedroom with incomplete plumbing is a project that needs significant capital before it generates any income. Know which buyer you are before you look at this one seriously. We have been in some interesting territory: a barn in the Panhandle, a title dispute, an auction. Now let's shift into something that actually looks like a house somebody could move into and talk about what that is worth in this market. House number 4, Madison, Florida, $70,000. Brand new AC unit, newly remodeled flooring. Washer and dryer included, immediate occupancy. This is the first listing on this entire countdown that uses the phrase move-in ready and has the receipts to partially back it up. 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, 960 square feet, $70,000. The rent estimate on this one is $1,199 a month, which at a $70,000 purchase price on a property that does not need major work upfront is a yield picture that most Florida markets simply do not offer. Here is the honest context. Madison is a small town in North Florida, about 35 minutes from Valdosta, Georgia. The property tax on this one is $1,503 a year. That is $125 a month, and it is the highest we have seen on this list so far. That carrying cost matters in the rental math. Madison's median household income sits around $48,000, which is mid-range for this list. The local crime data sends mixed signals depending on the source. I have seen city-level indexes that look rough and neighborhood-level data that looks much milder. That means the block matters here more than the city-level headline. Drive it, walk it, ask questions before you commit. But for a property that requires no immediate capital outlay, this one deserves a serious look. House number 3, Laurel Hill, Florida, $49,000. $49,000, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,452 square feet, and it is inside Okaloosa County, which has a median household income of over $81,000. That is not a typo. That is one of the strongest income profiles in this entire batch, and it is attached to a $49,000 house. Laurel Hill is about 26 minutes from Crestview and roughly an hour to the Destin and Fort Walton Beach corridor. Okaloosa County has significant military presence. Eglin Air Force Base and Hurlburt Field are both in this county, and military employment creates stable, consistent rental demand, the kind of tenant profile that pays on time and takes care of the property. The house needs renovation. Cash only, the listing is clear about that. A 1961 ranch of this size and fixer condition is probably a $15,000 to $25,000 rehab, depending on systems. At $49,000 entry plus $20,000 in repairs, you are all in at $69,000 on a house inside a county with an $81,000 median income and documented rental demand from a military employment base. That combination is hard to find. Crime Grade rates Laurel Hill safer than 93% of cities by its methodology. This one, to me, has some of the most interesting raw numbers on the list. House number 2, Defuniak Springs, Florida, $80,000. $110 a year in property taxes. That is not a misprint. $9 a month. On a house in Florida, a state that is not known for being easy on property taxes, you're carrying this property for the cost of a fast food lunch every single month while you figure out what to do with it. And there is a lot to figure out. The property sits on 1.5 acres, combining 2 separate parcels. There is an RV hookup and a power pole already on the land. The listing is clear that the house either needs significant repair or possible removal, and that the value here is in the land and the infrastructure it already has. Defuniak Springs is about 57 minutes to Destin and an hour to Panama City Beach, which puts this property inside the gravitational pull of one of the most desirable coastal corridors in the entire Southeast. For someone with a build-new vision, this land near the Panhandle at $80,000 with almost no tax burden is a fundamentally different kind of deal than anything we have looked at. For someone who needs a house right now, this is not the answer. Know your thesis. But the location leverage here is real, the acreage is real, and $9 a month in taxes is the kind of number that makes long-term holders very comfortable while they execute a plan. Acreage, $9 a month in taxes. Panhandle access, that was almost number 1. But there is one property left on this list, and it is the one I keep coming back to when I ask myself, which one of these makes sense for the widest range of buyers? House number 1, Beverly Hills, Florida, $80,000. This is not the cheapest house on this list. It is not the biggest. It is not the one with the most dramatic upside or the wildest backstory. It is the one that makes the most sense for the most types of buyers. And at this price level in this state, that is actually the rarest thing. Block construction, stucco exterior, attached carport, public water, public sewer, no HOA, built in 1964, which puts it in standard mid-century ranch territory. Not a 100-year-old mystery house, not a building with incomplete plumbing and an outdoor bathhouse. A real house on a public utility grid with no homeowners association telling you what color your mailbox has to be. Beverly Hills is a community in Citrus County, about 10 miles from Crystal River and about an hour and 25 minutes from Tampa. Crystal River is known for something specific. It is one of the only places in the world where you can legally swim with wild manatees. That is a tourism driver, a retiree magnet, and an outdoor recreation anchor rolled into one. Citrus County has a median household income of $56,000, and the area is drawing buyers who want Florida lifestyle without Florida prices. The property taxes on this one are $1,909 a year, the highest on this list, about $159 a month. That is the honest trade-off for being in an established community with real infrastructure. But the crime profile here is meaningfully better than the Jacksonville entries. Multiple sources put Beverly Hills at or below national averages, which is not a claim you can make about much of what we covered today. A reasonable rehab on a 1964 block home of this size is somewhere in the $12,000 to $22,000 range for a solid update, flooring, kitchen refresh, bath refresh, paint, and whatever the roof and HVAC look like on inspection, all in under $100,000 on a block home 10 minutes from Crystal River, an hour from Tampa, with public utilities and no HOA. That is the combination that puts this at number 1. 10 houses, all of them in Florida, all of them under $80,000, and none of them are the same deal. 3 of them are in Jacksonville zip codes that demand real market knowledge before you put a dollar in. One is an auction, one is a land play with a barn attached, one has a title dispute you need an attorney for before you close. And then there is Beverly Hills, quiet, boring, block construction, public utilities, no HOA, 10 minutes from one of the most unique natural attractions in the state, sitting at the top of the list because it is the one that makes sense when you stop looking for drama and start looking for a deal you can actually execute. The framework is the same on every one of them: inspection, rehab estimate, market comps, rental analysis, in that order. Before you make an offer, not after. Drop a comment below. Which one of these would you go after if you had $20,000 for repairs? Pick a number, 1 through 10. Tell me which one and tell me why. I read every comment, and tell me what you want next. Do we stay in Florida and go under 100,000 or open up more of the state, or do we move to a completely different market? Let me know. I will build the next one around whatever you want to see. Subscribe if you are not already. We are doing more of this.